these days, the word trauma is used very loosely, and that is not the textbook definition of what trauma is. A trauma is an experience that defies your capacity to cope and leaves you with a feeling of utter helplessness. Okay? What does this really mean? Okay? Let's go back to thousands and thousands and millions of years back, okay? When we were animals, right? We were constantly guarding ourselves because if we didn't, we would get eaten as prey, okay? This part of our brain is the oldest part of our brain, okay? It's called the survival brain, the reptilian brain, okay? And the reptilian brain is meant to protect us from physical danger, okay? The amygdala, which is the specific portion of the reptilian brain, it is actually designed to protect us from physical danger, okay? Now, in the case of physical danger, we need this mechanism to kick in and protect us, because otherwise we won't know. Let's say a man with a knife is coming very close toward you. You need to be able to look at that, perceive that, and say, that is not a good thing. I need to get away from this person, or I need to be ready to attack, okay? Let's look at what attachment is in relation to this. When a person with a knife, and I'm giving this hypothetical situation because it's a physical danger. Once we associate it with physical, then we can go to the mental layer and associate it with perception and how we do that, okay? And experience. So now, when a person who has this physical danger item, they're coming toward you, I'm going to punch you, I'm coming toward you, okay? The moment something kicks in us to say, I'm going to punch you fucking back if you touch me, that's an anxious attached style. Okay? An avoidant is going to run. The moment they see that, they're going to run. But that doesn't mean there was no anxiety. It's just the response mechanism to the anxiety itself. Does this make sense? So the perception of attack is there, but one says, I'm going to fight it. Okay, that's the anxious person. So as anxious as you are, the reason you are stressed out right now is because you have suppressed a portion of you that wants to fight the situation. That is the reason the stress is inside your body. This is why I told you yesterday, go and work out. Okay, and the reason you feel better after a workout is exactly because of that, because you've got to expel some of that energy out of you. That's why it feels better. Okay. Now, an avoidant is exactly what Rose did. Okay. It causes me anxiety, but I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. So if you're going to talk about that, I don't want to meet with you. Okay. You understand what's going on now, right? The dynamic. So somewhere in her childhood, an experience happened which caused her to say, this is what I need to adopt as a coping mechanism to avoid being eaten. But the thing is, the amygdala doesn't know how to differentiate between an actual threat and a perceived threat. In other words, there are false positives. Now, just because somebody put a baby down in the crib and said, I'm going to just practice tough love and let this baby cry, okay, that doesn't mean there was an actual threat to the baby. I'll give you an example of this, okay? One of my exes, a man I loved very dearly, still great friends, you know, but he had this thing, okay? Like when he was a small baby and he remembers this incident 100% in his mind. He's never forgotten this, okay? When he was a baby in the crib, several months old, okay? His mother put a netting around his crib. He's from Germany. They put a netting around his crib, okay? And he was in the crib. She put a netting around the crib and she walked away to do her work. Now, she knew the baby was safe, okay? But this big wasp landed on his net. And he saw this wasp on the net, okay, and freaked out and started crying. He starts to cry and cry and cry. Mama doesn't come back. Mama doesn't come back because Mama knows the baby is safe. She's like, he needs to cope with this. Forget it, not going to go back. Okay. He perceived this as mom is not available to me when I need her. She abandoned me. And now what happens is that is a misperception of an experience, because the reality is the mother had knowledge of something and all she was doing is to get the baby to be more self-reliant. That is a form of love too. Because you can't survive in this world if you're emotionally dependent on your mother. Okay? So she was ensuring the baby's survival and perhaps even doing it the way she was taught to do it by her parents. There was nothing wrong with it. Okay? But his perception and expectations were teaching her that she was off, and she was teaching him that you need to be reliant. So in reality, it was neutral energy. And neutral energy is love energy. Okay? But his perception was not like that. So the amygdala still kicked off. Now, every time he had any perceived threat in any relationship, his method was, let me run away from this. I don't want to deal with this. Because that's what keeps me safe.